The board meeting was supposed to be routine. Quarterly earnings review, strategic planning, the usual corporate theater. I sat in the back of the conference room at Thornhill Industries, one of 20 people in expensive suits discussing profit margins and market expansion. My husband Julian sat 3 seats away, completely unaware that I owned 43% of his father's company. Julian's father, William Thornhill, stood at the head of the table presenting financial results. Revenue is up 12% year over year. Our expansion into Asian markets has exceeded projections. The board should be pleased. The board members nodded approvingly. Julian smiled, proud of his father's success. He had no idea that the anonymous institutional investor who'd saved Thornhill Industries from bankruptcy 5 years ago was sitting across the room. That anonymous investor was me. And I just decided it was time to stop being anonymous. Mr. Thornhill, I said, my voice cutting through the self-congratulatory murmur, I have a question about the executive compensation structure. William looked at me with barely concealed condescension. He'd never liked me, thought Julian had married beneath him when he'd chosen a nobody without family connections or inherited wealth. Ms. Cross, this is a closed board meeting. Observers don't typically participate in discussions. I'm not an observer, I'm a shareholder, and I'd like to understand why executive compensation increased 35% while employee wages remained flat. Julian's head snapped toward me. He looked confused. I'd never mentioned being involved with Thornhill Industries. Astrid, what are you talking about? If only he'd known the truth. If only any of them had known who'd really been controlling this company for the past 5 years. Let me back up 7 years. That's when I met Julian Thornhill at a charity gala. I was 28. He was 32. I'd made my fortune in tech, building and selling a software company for $340 million when I was 26. Julian knew I was successful, but he didn't know the extent. I'd been careful to downplay my wealth, presenting myself as comfortable rather than extraordinarily rich. Why? Because I'd learned early that extreme wealth changes how people treat you. It attracts opportunists, gold diggers, and people who see you as a resource rather than a person. I wanted to be loved for myself, not my bank account. Julian seemed perfect, intelligent, kind, funny. He worked at his father's company, Thornhill Industries, a manufacturing conglomerate that had been successful for decades. He wasn't financially dependent on me. He had his own career, his own money. Our courtship was wonderful. He was attentive without being smothering, ambitious without being ruthless. When he proposed after 2 years, I said yes without hesitation. We had a beautiful wedding. His family, old money Boston elite, seemed to tolerate me despite my lack of pedigree. My family, middle-class Midwest, was just happy I was happy. The first few years of marriage were blissful. We bought a nice house, nothing ostentatious. We traveled, we entertained, we built a life together. I continued managing my investments quietly, maintaining a low profile. Julian never asked detailed questions about my finances. He knew I'd sold a company, but he thought it had been a modest success. Maybe $10 million. I let him think that. Then, 4 years into our marriage, Julian's father called an emergency family meeting. The Thornhill family gathered at William's estate. Julian, his older brother Marcus, their mother Patricia, and various board members. I was invited as Julian's spouse. Thornhill Industries is facing a crisis, William announced. Our largest client just filed bankruptcy, owing us $200 million combined with some poor investments I made personally. We're facing severe liquidity problems. The room went silent. How severe? Marcus asked. We may not make payroll next month. We're looking at potential bankruptcy. Julian looked devastated. Thornhill Industries wasn't just a company, it was the family legacy. 4 generations of Thornhills had built it. What are our options? Patricia asked, her voice tight. We're seeking emergency financing, but given the circumstances, lenders are demanding significant equity stakes. We may have to give up controlling interest to survive. Julian turned to me after the meeting. This is catastrophic. My grandfather built this company. If we lose control, how much equity would you need to give up? 40 to 50%, and the terms would be brutal. High interest rates, board seats, operational control. I made a decision in that moment. What if there was another option? What do you mean? What if you could get financing without giving up operational control? Better terms, lower rates? That doesn't exist in our situation. We're too much of a risk. What if it did exist? Julian looked at me strangely. Do you know someone? Maybe. Let me make some calls. What I didn't tell him was that I didn't need to call anyone. I had the money to save Thornhill Industries myself. Over the next week, I worked with my financial advisors to structure a deal. We created a shell investment company, Olympus Capital Partners, that would acquire 43% of Thornhill Industries for $850 million. The terms were generous. Low interest rates, no operational control, no board seats initially, just a passive investment with quarterly reporting requirements. William was suspicious but desperate. Who is Olympus Capital? I've never heard of them. My attorney, who was managing the deal, explained, they're a private investment firm focusing on industrial holdings. Very discreet. They prefer to remain anonymous. Why would they offer such favorable terms? They believe in Thornhill's long-term potential. This is a strategic investment, not a predatory acquisition. William had no choice but to accept. The deal closed in 3 weeks. Thornhill Industries was saved. The family maintained operational control, and I became the company's largest shareholder, completely anonymously. Julian was relieved and grateful to the mysterious Olympus Capital that had saved his family's legacy. I can't believe someone was willing to invest on such good terms, he said. We were so lucky. You were, I agreed, not mentioning that luck had nothing to do with it. Over the next 5 years, I quietly managed my investment. I received quarterly financial reports, attended board meetings as an Olympus representative, and maintained the fiction that I was just an employee of the investment firm. The Thornhills never connected Astrid Cross Thornhill, Julian's wife, with the mysterious investor who'd saved their company. Why didn't I tell them? Several reasons. First, I wanted to see how the family would treat me without knowing I was their financial savior. Second, I was curious whether they'd manage the company responsibly or abuse the generous terms I'd given them. Third, I wanted to maintain the separation between my role as Julian's wife and my role as a major investor. For 5 years, it worked. The company thrived under the capital infusion. Revenue grew, new markets opened, the workforce expanded. The Thornhills treated me with polite distance. Not hostile, but not warm. I was Julian's wife, tolerated but not truly accepted. William, in particular, remained condescending. At family dinners, he'd make subtle comments about my background. Astrid, I forget, what did your father do? Something in manufacturing? He was a machinist. Ah, yes, working class. Well, Julian certainly married for love rather than social position. The implication was clear. I'd married up. I was fortunate Julian had chosen me. It rankled, but I stayed quiet. Meanwhile, at board meetings, the Thornhills treated the Olympus representative, me in a different capacity, with respect and deference. They reported to me, sought approval for major decisions, treated me as the powerful investor I was. The duality was fascinating and increasingly frustrating. Then, 6 months ago, things changed. William announced he was preparing to step down as CEO and hand control to Marcus. Julian would become CFO. It was the succession plan the family had always envisioned. Except there was a problem. Marcus was incompetent. I'd watched him for 5 years through my role as Olympus representative. He was arrogant, made poor strategic decisions, and had none of his father's business acumen. If Marcus took over as CEO, he'd destroy the company within 3 years. I raised concerns at a board meeting, speaking as the Olympus representative. I have reservations about the proposed succession plan. Marcus lacks the experience for the CEO role. William bristled. Marcus has been groomed for this position his entire life. Grooming isn't the same as competence. His division has underperformed for 3 consecutive quarters. That's a temporary market fluctuation. It's a pattern of poor decision-making. I'm formally objecting to this succession plan on behalf of Olympus Capital. William's face reddened. With all due respect, Olympus is a passive investor. You don't have operational control. I have 43% ownership. That's enough to block major decisions. The room went silent. For 5 years, I'd been passive, letting the family run things. Now, I was asserting my authority. The board meeting ended tensely. William was furious that the anonymous investor was challenging the family succession plan. That evening at home, Julian vented about work. The Olympus investor is being unreasonable. They're blocking my brother's promotion to CEO. Why? They claim Marcus isn't qualified. It's insulting. Marcus has been with the company for 15 years. But is he good at his job? Julian hesitated. He's learning. The CEO role will help him grow. Or it will accelerate the company's decline. Whose side are you on, Astrid? I'm on the side of not destroying a company that employs 12,000 people. Julian looked at me strangely. You sound like you care more about Thornhill Industries than I do. Maybe I do. The tension between maintaining my dual roles was becoming unsustainable. Over the next month, the conflict escalated. William tried to circumvent my objections by restructuring the leadership team in ways that didn't require shareholder approval. I pushed back harder, requiring board votes on decisions that had previously been handled internally. The Thornhill family grew increasingly frustrated with the meddling investor. At a family dinner, William complained, "This Olympus capital firm is becoming a problem. They're blocking reasonable business decisions." Maybe their concerns are valid, I suggested. You don't understand business, Astrid. This is complex corporate strategy. I understand enough to know that putting an unqualified person in charge is a recipe for disaster. Patricia gave me a patronizing smile. That's sweet that you care, dear, but this is family business. We know what's best for the company. I bit my tongue. They had no idea they were dismissing the person who literally owned the company. The final straw came 2 weeks before the board meeting where everything would change. Marcus, drunk at a family gathering, made a comment that revealed everything I needed to know. Once I'm CEO, I'm selling the Asia division. It's too complicated to manage, and I can get $2 billion for it. Then I'm buying a sports team. I stared at him. You're planning to sell the most profitable division? It's my company. Well, will be soon. I can do what I want. Julian looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. The Asia division represented 40% of Thornhill's revenue and the majority of its growth potential. Selling it would gut the company. That's a terrible idea, I said. You don't understand corporate strategy, Marcus said dismissively. You're Julian's wife. Stick to charity galas or whatever you do. That's when I decided I was done being silent. Done letting the Thornhills treat me like a fortunate nobody while I literally owned the company saving them. Done watching them make destructive decisions with my investment. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. As the representative of Olympus Capital, I had the authority. William tried to refuse. This is unnecessary. We can discuss any concerns in the regular quarterly meeting. This can't wait. I'm invoking my rights as major shareholder to call an emergency session. See you Thursday. Thursday arrived. The board assembled, confused and concerned. William looked furious. Julian looked worried, probably sensing his brother's promotion was in jeopardy. Marcus looked arrogant, assuming his father would handle whatever problem had arisen. Thank you all for gathering on short notice, I began, standing at the front of the room rather than in my usual back corner seat. I've called this meeting because we need to address leadership succession and strategic direction. With all due respect, William interrupted, this is a family matter. Olympus has always been a passive investor. Olympus has been a patient investor, I corrected. There's a difference, and our patience has limits. What exactly are you objecting to? Marcus asked. Everything about the proposed succession plan. Marcus is unqualified to be CEO. His division consistently underperforms. His strategic thinking is short-sighted, and he's planning to sell the Asia division, which would destroy 40% of company revenue. Marcus's face went red. That's private information. How do you know about that? I make it my business to know what's happening with my investment, and I'm formally blocking the succession plan. You can't do that, William said. I have 43% ownership. You have 35% split among family members. I absolutely can block it. Then who do you propose as CEO? Julian. The room went silent. Julian's eyes widened. What? Julian has the competence, the strategic thinking, and the emotional intelligence to run this company effectively. He should be CEO, not Marcus. William shook his head. That's not the plan. Marcus is the eldest. It's his birthright. This isn't a monarchy, it's a business. Competence matters more than birth order. This is outrageous, Patricia said. You're disrupting our family legacy. I'm protecting your family legacy. If Marcus becomes CEO and sells the Asia division, Thornhill Industries will be irrelevant within 5 years. You don't know that, Marcus argued. I do know that. I know because I've spent 5 years watching this company, analyzing every decision and understanding exactly what makes it successful. And I know that you, Marcus, are not capable of maintaining that success. Marcus stood up, furious. Who the hell do you think you are? I smiled. I'm Astrid Thornhill, and I'm also the anonymous investor you've been dealing with for 5 years. Olympus Capital doesn't exist. It's a shell company I created to invest in Thornhill Industries anonymously. I own 43% of this company, and I'm done pretending otherwise. The room exploded. Multiple people started talking at once. Julian looked like he'd been slapped. William's face went from red to purple. Patricia gasped. Marcus stood frozen, processing the information. That's impossible, William finally said. How could you possibly have that kind of money? I sold my software company for $340 million 7 years ago. I've invested wisely since then. Currently, I'm worth approximately $2.7 billion. The $850 million I invested in Thornhill 5 years ago was about a third of my liquid assets at the time. You're a billionaire, Patricia whispered. Yes, and I've been one since before I met Julian. Julian looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, certainly, but also something else. Betrayal? You lied to me, he said quietly. I didn't lie. I just didn't disclose the full extent of my wealth. Why? Because I wanted to be loved for myself, not my money. And because I wanted to see how your family would treat me without knowing I was the one keeping this company afloat. This is insane, Marcus said. You've been spying on us. I've been protecting my investment and watching you plan to destroy it. William leaned forward. If this is true, if you really are the Olympus investor, then you've been manipulating this family for years. No, I've been giving you space to succeed or fail on your own merits. You succeeded, which is why the company has thrived. But now you're planning to fail by putting Marcus in charge, and I won't allow it. You can't dictate who runs this company, William insisted. With 43% ownership, I can, and I will. Julian becomes CEO, or I call a vote of no confidence and install my own management team. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Board members were arguing, the Thornhill family was in shock, and I stood at the front of the room, calm and resolute. Julian approached me after most people had left. We need to talk, privately. We went to a small office down the hall. Julian closed the door and turned to me. Why didn't you tell me? Which part? That I'm a billionaire or that I saved your family's company? Both. All of it. Astrid, we've been married 7 years. And for 7 years, I've been watching your family treat me like I'm fortunate to be associated with them. Your father has been condescending. Your mother has been patronizing. Your brother has been dismissive. All while I literally own the company that bears your family name. So this is revenge? You're punishing us? No. If I wanted revenge, I would have let your father lose the company 5 years ago. I would have let Marcus become CEO and drive it into the ground. I'm trying to save the company and give you the role you actually deserve. By lying to me for years? I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing, Astrid. Is it? Did you ever ask about my finances in detail? Did you ever want to know how much I was worth? Julian was silent. You didn't ask because you didn't care, I continued. You were happy with your assumptions, comfortable with the idea that you'd married someone beneath your social status. If I'd told you I was wealthier than your entire family combined, would you have married me? Of course. Would you? Really? Or would you have wondered if I was trying to buy my way into your family? Would your parents have accepted me as Julian's choice or resented me as a gold digger trying to infiltrate old money society? He couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. The Thornhill's acceptance of me, lukewarm as it was, depended on my apparent lack of significant wealth. So what now? Julian asked. Now you decide, do you want to be CEO of Thornhill Industries? Because I can make that happen. Or do you want to let Marcus destroy the company out of family loyalty? That's not fair. You're making me choose between my brother and the company. No, I'm making you choose between competence and nepotism. Marcus isn't qualified. You know it. I know it. Everyone in that boardroom knows it. The only question is whether you'll admit it. Julian paced the small office. If I take the CEO role, Marcus will hate me. My father will be disappointed. Your father is disappointed because his succession plan was challenged. But deep down, he knows Marcus isn't ready. He's just been ignoring that truth because family tradition matters more than business reality. How can you be sure I'm ready? Because I've been watching you for 5 years through board meetings and financial reports. You're smart, strategic, and you actually understand the business. Marcus coasts on family name. You've earned your position. Julian sat down heavily. I can't believe you've been the Olympus investor this whole time. You've been in those board meetings, listening to us discuss strategy, and you never said anything. I said plenty, as the Olympus representative. You just didn't know it was me. Did you enjoy it? Watching us treat you differently depending on which role you were playing? Enjoy isn't the right word. It was educational. Seeing how your family treats Astrid the wife versus the powerful investor? The difference was striking. We weren't that bad. Julian, your father literally told me to stick to charity galas last week. Your mother has consistently implied I should be grateful Julian married me. Marcus called me a gold digger at your cousin's wedding. Don't pretend the disrespect wasn't real. Julian looked ashamed. I should have defended you more. Yes, you should have. But you didn't, because you believed on some level that they were right, that I had married up, that I was fortunate to be part of the Thornhill family. I never thought. You did. Maybe not consciously, but you accepted their treatment of me. You never questioned it. We sat in heavy silence. Finally, Julian said, What happens if I say no? If I refuse to take the CEO position? Then I vote Marcus out of his current role, bring in outside management, and restructure the company to protect my investment. The Thornhill family loses operational control. You'd really do that? To protect 12,000 employees in a $3 billion company? Absolutely. I didn't invest $850 million to watch Marcus run it into the ground so he can buy a sports team. Julian winced. You heard about that? I hear about everything. That's the benefit of owning 43% of a company. People tell you things. All right, I'll do it. I'll take the CEO role. You're sure? No, I'm terrified, but you're right. Marcus would destroy the company, and I think I can do this. I know you can. That's why I'm insisting on it. We returned to the boardroom where the remaining board members and Thornhill family members were waiting. The atmosphere was tense. We've made a decision, I announced. Julian will become CEO of Thornhill Industries, effective immediately. William will transition to Chairman Emeritus. Marcus will remain in his current role with enhanced oversight. Absolutely not, William said. You can't dictate. I have 43% ownership. I can absolutely dictate this. And if you fight me, I'll call a formal shareholder vote. Do you really want to see how that turns out? William looked at the other board members, calculating. He knew he'd lose. This is a hostile takeover, Marcus said. It's a strategic intervention. There's a difference. Over the next week, the transition was formalized. Julian was officially named CEO. William accepted the Chairman Emeritus title with barely concealed bitterness. Marcus remained furious but powerless. The announcement went public, sending shockwaves through the business community. Thornhill Industries announces leadership change. Julian Thornhill named CEO. The business press speculated about the reasons. Had William's health declined? Was this a planned succession? They didn't know about the internal battle or the anonymous investor's identity. At home, Julian and I were in a strange place. Married but not quite partners. Processing revelations that changed everything. I need to understand something, Julian said one evening. Did you marry me because you loved me or because you saw an investment opportunity? I married you because I loved you. The investment in Thornhill Industries came later, when your father needed help. That was separate. But you never told me. For 5 years, you attended board meetings and shaped strategy for my family's company, and I had no idea. Would you have wanted to know? Would it have changed anything? Yes, I would have. I don't know what I would have done differently, but I deserve to know. Maybe. Or maybe you would have told your family and they would have treated me differently. Not necessarily better. Possibly worse. They might have resented my influence or felt beholden to me. You don't trust my family? Should I? They've spent 7 years treating me like an inferior who got lucky. Why would I trust them with information about my wealth? Julian had no answer. The marriage counselor we started seeing the following week was expensive and discreet. It sounds like trust is the core issue, she observed. Astrid, you didn't trust Julian enough to share your full financial situation. Julian, you didn't defend your wife against your family's disrespect. Those are both trust failures. I was protecting myself, I explained. From what? From being seen as a bank account instead of a person. From having my worth measured by my wealth rather than my character. And Julian, the counselor turned to him. Why didn't you defend Astrid more aggressively against your family's condescension? I didn't think it was that bad. They can be snobby, but I thought Astrid could handle it. Or you were uncomfortable confronting your family, the counselor suggested. Maybe. Yes. I didn't want to create conflict. So you prioritized your family's comfort over your wife's dignity? Julian looked stricken. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked. How many times did your father make comments about my background? How many times did Marcus imply I was a gold digger? How many times did your mother suggest I should be grateful? And how many times did you tell them to stop? Silence. Once, Julian finally admitted. I defended you once, early in our marriage, but you told me it wasn't necessary, that you could handle it. So I stopped. Because I was trying to be the cool wife who doesn't need defending. But that doesn't mean the disrespect wasn't harmful. We spent months in counseling, working through layers of hurt and mistrust. The issue wasn't just my hidden wealth. It was the fundamental dynamics of our marriage and how Julian's family had been allowed to treat me. Meanwhile, Julian was navigating his new role as CEO. It was challenging, but he was rising to it. His strategic decisions were sound, his leadership was improving, and the company was responding well. Marcus, predictably, was undermining him at every opportunity. At family dinners, Marcus would make snide comments about puppet CEOs and investor control. How does it feel, Jules, being Astrid's employee? I'm not her employee. Sure, you're just doing exactly what she tells you to, very independent. I'd had enough. Marcus, you're bitter because you were passed over for a role you weren't qualified for? That's understandable, but taking it out on Julian is pathetic. Stay out of family matters, Marcus snapped. I own 43% of your family company. This is exactly my matter. You bought your way into this family? No, I married into this family when I was already wealthy. I then saved this family's company from bankruptcy with my own money. You're welcome, by the way, William interjected. This constant conflict isn't productive. Then stop tolerating Marcus's behavior, I said. He's undermining Julian's authority, spreading dissent, and actively hoping the company fails to prove he should have been CEO. That's not family loyalty. That's sabotage. Marcus would never, Patricia began. Marcus literally told me he planned to sell the Asia division to buy a sports team. He doesn't care about Thornhill Industries' legacy. He cares about his ego. The family dinners became less frequent after that. Julian and I started spending more time separate from the Thornhill clan, building our own life independent of family drama. A year after the revelation, things had stabilized. Julian was thriving as CEO. The company was growing. Marcus had finally accepted he wasn't getting the top job and was focusing on his division. William and Patricia were gradually, reluctantly accepting that their daughter-in-law was actually the family's financial superior. But our marriage was still fragile. The counseling had helped, but fundamental trust issues remained. I need to know, Julian said one evening. Is there anything else you're hiding? Other investments, other secrets. Nothing significant. You know the major things now. Do I? Because I thought I knew you, Astrid. And then I discovered you'd been living a double life for 5 years. It wasn't a double life. It was strategic compartmentalization. That's the same thing. No, it's not. A double life would be if I'd been secretly married to someone else or living in another city. I was just managing an investment privately. An investment in my family's company, while married to me, without telling me. How is that not a massive betrayal? Because I was protecting you, I finally shouted. Protecting me from what? From having to choose between me and your family. If I'd told you I was the Olympus investor, you would have been caught between loyalty to me and loyalty to them. Every board decision, every strategic conflict, you would have been torn. I kept it secret to spare you that. Julian was quiet. You don't think I could have handled it? I don't think it would have been fair to put you in that position. So you made the decision for me. You decided what I could handle, what I needed to know, what was best for our marriage, without consulting me. He was right. I had been controlling, making unilateral decisions about our relationship, just like I'd been controlling at Thornhill Industries, using my financial power to dictate outcomes. I'm sorry, I said. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really protecting myself from vulnerability, from the risk that you'd choose your family over me. I would have chosen you. Would you? Really? Because for 7 years, you've been letting them treat me like I'm inferior. Defending me once and then stopping doesn't constitute choosing me. I thought you didn't need defending. You're obviously capable of taking care of yourself. Everyone needs defending sometimes. Being capable doesn't mean I don't deserve support from my husband. We were both crying now. 7 years of accumulated hurt spilling out. I don't know how to fix this, Julian admitted. Neither do I. But we have to try. We spent the next year really working on the marriage. Julian started standing up to his family when they made condescending comments. I started being more transparent about my business dealings and financial decisions. Slowly, we rebuilt trust. 2 years after the revelation, Thornhill Industries was thriving under Julian's leadership. Revenue had increased 40%, the Asia division was expanding aggressively, and employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. At the annual board meeting, William acknowledged what everyone knew but hadn't said. Julian has exceeded expectations as CEO. The company is stronger than it's ever been. I was wrong about the succession plan. Marcus wasn't ready. Julian was the right choice. It was the closest William had ever come to admitting I'd been right. After the meeting, he approached me privately. Astrid, I owe you an apology. Multiple apologies, actually. For what specifically? For treating you as lesser, for implying you'd married up, for not recognizing your intelligence, your capability, your worth. You didn't need our family, we needed you. Thank you for saying that. I've been thinking about something. You saved this company, not just with your investment, though that was crucial, but with your strategic guidance over 5 years. You shaped decisions, prevented mistakes, positioned us for growth. And we never acknowledged it because we didn't know it was you. I didn't need acknowledgement. But you deserved it, and I'm giving it now, belatedly. Thank you, Astrid, for saving Thornhill Industries and for putting up with our family's snobbery for far longer than you should have. It felt like closure, or at least the beginning of it. Patricia approached me at a family event a few weeks later. I've been unfair to you. I judged you based on class rather than character. I'm ashamed of that. I appreciate you saying so. Can I ask why you kept your wealth secret? It must have been difficult, letting us treat you that way when you could have revealed the truth at any time. I wanted to be accepted for myself, not for my money. And I wanted to see if your family would treat me with basic respect, even thinking I had less than you. The answer was no, by the way. You didn't. Patricia winced. We failed that test. Spectacularly. 3 years after the revelation, Julian and I renewed our vows. It was small, intimate, nothing like our first wedding, just close friends and immediate family. In my vows, I said, Julian, I'm sorry for keeping secrets. I'm sorry for not trusting you with the full truth. I'm sorry for thinking I had to protect you instead of partnering with you. I promise to be more transparent, more vulnerable, and to trust that you're strong enough to handle the complexity of who I am. In his vows, Julian said, Astrid, I'm sorry for not defending you, for prioritizing my family's comfort over your dignity, for not seeing how their treatment affected you. I promise to be your partner, your advocate, and to never let anyone, family or otherwise, disrespect you again. We meant every word. The marriage that followed was different than the first 7 years. Stronger, more honest, more equal. 4 years after the revelation, Marcus asked to meet with me privately. I've been an ass, he said bluntly, a complete ass. I was jealous, entitled, and bitter. I took it out on you and Julian when really I was just confronting my own inadequacy. That's very self-aware. I've been in therapy, lots of therapy, and I've realized something. You were right. I wasn't ready to be CEO. I would have destroyed the company. You saved me from myself, even though I hated you for it. I didn't do it to save you. I did it to save the company and protect my investment. I know, but the effect was the same. You stopped me from making a catastrophic mistake. So, thank you. I know that's weird to say, but thank you. You're welcome. And Marcus, you're doing good work in your division now. Not trying to be CEO freed you to actually excel at what you're good at? You noticed? I notice everything. I own 43% of the company. We both laughed. The animosity was fading, replaced by something like mutual respect. 5 years after the revelation, I published a book, The Silent Investor: How I Built Wealth, Saved a Company, and Navigated Family Dynamics. It detailed my journey, building and selling my software company, meeting and marrying Julian, investing in Thornhill Industries anonymously, and eventually revealing the truth. The book was controversial. Some people praised my strategic thinking and business acumen. Others criticized me for keeping secrets from my husband and manipulating family dynamics. You were controlling, one critic wrote, using wealth as power to dictate outcomes rather than partnering transparently. They weren't entirely wrong. I had been controlling. I'd made unilateral decisions that affected Julian and his family without their knowledge or consent. But the alternative, I wrote in response, was watching a company fail, 12,000 people lose their jobs, and an incompetent leader destroy 4 generations of legacy. Sometimes control is necessary to prevent catastrophe. The book sparked broader conversations about wealth and relationships, about when transparency is required versus when privacy is protective, about how families handle power dynamics when the assumptions are challenged. Julian wrote a companion essay for a business publication, What It's Like Being Married to a Billionaire You Didn't Know Was a Billionaire. Finding out Astrid had secretly saved my family's company was shocking, he wrote, but the deeper shock was realizing I'd been willfully ignorant. I'd never asked detailed questions about her wealth because I was comfortable with my assumptions. I'd let my family treat her poorly because I didn't want to cause conflict. The revelation wasn't just about her secrets, it was about my failures. The essay went viral. Thousands of people, particularly men married to successful women, shared their own stories of taking their wives' competence for granted or failing to defend them against family disrespect. 6 years after the revelation, Thornhill Industries went public. The IPO was massively successful, valuing the company at $4.8 billion. My 43% stake became worth approximately $2.06 billion. Combined with my other investments, my net worth exceeded $5 billion. You're officially a multi-billionaire now, Julian said, watching the stock price climb on IPO day. We're multi-billionaires, community property, remember? That feels weird to say, we're billionaires. You're acting like this is new. I've been a billionaire the entire time you've known me. I know, but seeing it publicly, seeing the stock price and the market valuation, it makes it real in a way it wasn't before. The IPO also meant my investment in Thornhill was now public knowledge. Business press wrote extensively about the mystery investor revealed angle. Astrid Thornhill, wife of Thornhill Industries CEO Julian Thornhill, has been revealed as the anonymous investor who saved the company from bankruptcy 7 years ago. Her initial $850 million investment is now worth over $2 billion. The revelation created intense media scrutiny. We were profiled in major business publications, invited to speak at conferences, approached by aspiring entrepreneurs wanting advice. I hated the attention, but understood it came with the territory. At a conference panel about family businesses, I was asked, "Why did you keep your investment anonymous for so long?" Because I wanted the family to succeed or fail based on their own capabilities, not because they felt beholden to me. And because I wanted to see how they'd treat me without knowing I held their financial future in my hands. And how did they treat you? Poorly, which told me everything I needed to know about their character. The audience laughed, but it was true. The Thornhills' treatment of me, when they thought I was just Julian's financially modest wife, had revealed their actual values and priorities. 7 years after the revelation, William Thornhill passed away. He was 78, had been in declining health, and died peacefully surrounded by family. At the funeral, I gave a eulogy. William Thornhill was a complicated man. He built an incredible company, provided for his family, and created opportunities for thousands of employees. He was also prideful, stubborn, and could be condescending to people he perceived as beneath him socially. People shifted uncomfortably. Eulogies weren't supposed to be this honest. But in his final years, William grew. He acknowledged mistakes. He admitted when he'd been wrong. And most importantly, he learned to value people for their character and capabilities rather than their pedigree. That growth, that willingness to evolve even late in life, that's his real legacy. After the funeral, Patricia thanked me. That was honest, painfully honest, but true. William deserved honesty, even in death. He'd become a better person in his final years. That matters. He respected you, genuinely respected you, not because of your money, though that was impressive, but because you'd been right about Marcus, about Julian, about the company's direction. He told me once that you were the smartest person he'd ever met. That must have been hard for him to admit. It was, but he meant it. 8 years after the revelation, Julian and I had our first child, a daughter we named Claire. The pregnancy was complicated and the birth was difficult, but Claire was perfect. She's going to grow up with completely different expectations than I did, Julian said, holding our daughter. How so? She'll know her mother is brilliant and wealthy and powerful. She won't question whether women can lead or whether success is appropriate. She'll have you as a model. And you. She'll have you as a model for men who support their wives' success rather than resenting it. I hope so. God, I hope I do better than my father did. We had conversations about how to raise Claire with wealth. How much to tell her, when to tell her, how to ensure she was grounded despite extraordinary privilege. I don't want her to be ashamed of our wealth, I said, but I also don't want her to flaunt it or think it makes her better than others. How did your parents handle it with you? They didn't. I made my fortune as an adult. They were supportive, but it wasn't generational wealth. Claire will grow up with resources I never imagined as a child. So we figure it out together, teach her about responsibility, philanthropy, the obligation that comes with wealth. We started a foundation, focusing on educational access and economic opportunity. Claire would grow up understanding that wealth was a tool for positive change, not just personal indulgence. 9 years after the revelation, Thornhill Industries had expanded globally. The company now operated in 43 countries, employed 35,000 people, and was valued at $7.2 billion. My stake was worth approximately $3.1 billion. Julian had proven to be an exceptional CEO. Under his leadership, the company had tripled in size while maintaining strong employee satisfaction and ethical practices. You were right, he told me on our anniversary. About what specifically? I'm right about a lot of things. He laughed. About me being CEO, I didn't think I was ready. I thought Marcus was the natural choice because he was older, because that was the plan. But you saw something I didn't see in myself. I saw your potential, and I saw Marcus's limitations. It wasn't complicated. It was, to me, family loyalty versus competence. I thought loyalty should win. Loyalty is important. But not when it costs 35,000 people their jobs. You've always been clear about priorities. Company first, family second, personal comfort distant third. Is that criticism? No, it's admiration. You're willing to make hard decisions even when they're personally costly. That's real leadership. 10 years after the revelation, we faced a new challenge. A private equity firm approached with an offer to buy Thornhill Industries for $9.5 billion, a significant premium over market value. Julian was conflicted. It's an incredible offer. We could walk away with billions, never have to work again. But this company is my family's legacy. 4 generations of Thornhills built it. Selling feels like betraying that history. Or it feels like recognizing when something has run its course. Your grandfather started this company. Your father grew it. You've transformed it. Maybe selling at peak value is the smart move. What do you want to do? I want to know what you want. This is your family legacy, not mine. I'm just the investor. You're not just the investor. You're my wife, my partner, and frankly, the person whose business judgment I trust most. So, what do you think? I considered carefully. I think we should sell. The offer is excellent. The company is positioned perfectly, and I think it's time for us to focus on other things. Claire, philanthropy, whatever comes next. Marcus will be devastated. Marcus will be compensated handsomely. His shares are worth $180 million at this offer price. He'll survive. Patricia will feel like we're abandoning family legacy. Patricia will receive $250 million from her shares. I think she'll be consolable. Julian laughed. When you put it that way. We sold. The deal closed 6 months later. Thornhill Industries was acquired by the private equity firm. The Thornhill family collectively received approximately $3.2 billion. I received $4.1 billion for my 43% stake. Combined with my other investments, my net worth exceeded $8 billion. We were, by any measure, extraordinarily wealthy. The question became, what now? Julian retired from active CEO duties at 47. I was 43. We had more money than we could spend in multiple lifetimes. We could do anything, Julian said. Literally anything. What do you want to do? I want to solve problems, big, complex problems that money and strategy can address. We spent the next year studying various challenges: educational access, climate change, healthcare disparities, economic inequality. Eventually, we focused on a specific issue: the lack of capital access for women entrepreneurs. Women receive less than 3% of venture capital funding, I explained to Julian. Not because their businesses are less viable, but because the investment community is predominantly male and invests in people who look like them. So, we create a fund specifically for women entrepreneurs? Exactly. We commit $2 billion, we hire female investors. We focus on overlooked markets and founders. The Thornhill Cross Fund launched 18 months later. It was the largest women-focused investment fund in history. We funded 127 companies in the first 3 years. 73 of them were profitable within 5 years. 21 had successful exits. We generated both financial returns and social impact. This is what I was meant to do, I told Julian. Not just make money, but use it strategically to create opportunity. You're good at it, better than anyone I've seen. Meanwhile, we were raising Claire to understand her privileged position and the responsibility that came with it. She was curious, thoughtful, and showing early signs of her mother's strategic thinking. Mama, why do we have so much money when other people don't? She asked at 6 years old. Because I built a company that people valued, and I made smart choices with the money I earned. But having money creates responsibility. We have to use it to help people, not just enjoy it ourselves. How do we help people? We invest in their businesses, we fund education, we support organizations trying to solve big problems. We try to make the world a little better. Can I help? When you're older, absolutely. But for now, your job is to learn, to be kind, and to understand that money doesn't make you better than anyone else. 15 years after revealing my secret investment in Thornhill Industries, I reflected on everything that had happened. The marriage that had nearly broken under the weight of my secrets and Julian's complicity in his family's disrespect. The company that had been saved, grown, and ultimately sold. The family dynamics that had been completely transformed. Do you regret keeping the investment secret? Julian asked during one of our regular long conversations. Sometimes it created trust issues that took years to repair, but I also don't know if the alternative would have been better. If I'd told you from the beginning, would you have been able to separate your roles as my husband and as a Thornhill family member? I don't know. Probably not. Exactly. The secret was protective, even if it was also harmful. Sometimes there are no clean choices, just different types of complicated. What would you tell someone in a similar situation? Someone with wealth their spouse doesn't know about? I'd tell them to think carefully about why they're keeping it secret. If it's self-protection, that suggests trust issues in the relationship. If it's strategic, like my investment was, that's different. But either way, secrets have costs. The secret cost us years of authenticity in our marriage. It did, but it also protected you from impossible conflicts. I'm not sure which was more important. We'd spent 15 years processing, healing, and rebuilding. Our marriage now was stronger than it had ever been, built on honesty and mutual respect rather than assumptions and secrets. Claire was growing into a remarkable young woman, asking thoughtful questions about wealth, responsibility, and how to use privilege productively. The Thornhill family had evolved. Marcus had found his own path as an investor. Patricia had become a philanthropist. The family legacy had transformed from a company to a commitment to positive impact. Looking back, I didn't regret the choices I'd made. The secret investment had been necessary to save Thornhill Industries without creating impossible conflicts. The revelation had been necessary to prevent Marcus from destroying what we'd built. The journey had been painful, but ultimately transformative. If only they'd known from the beginning that the fortunate nobody Julian had married was actually a billionaire who would save their company, invest strategically for 5 years, and eventually reshape their entire family dynamics. But they hadn't known. And that ignorance had revealed everything I needed to understand about character, values, and the importance of being valued for yourself rather than your bank account. That was the real lesson, not about wealth or business strategy, but about the importance of being seen clearly, whatever that costs. I'd paid the cost of secrecy. I'd also reaped the benefits of strategic patience. And in the end, I'd built something authentic. A marriage based on truth, a family that respected competence, and a legacy that would extend far beyond any single company or fortune. That was worth more than $20 billion in shares. Though the $20 billion certainly didn't hurt.